welcome to this week's video. Today, I got a lot of requests actually from subscribers and on Instagram on asking if I would go over correct archery form. Correct form as you draw a bow. Primarily with my business, Mountain Physio, as a physical therapist, I see people every single day that come to me that are looking to reduce their shoulder pain, they're looking to draw better, they're looking for form correction, coaching, things like that, basically to be able to shoot for the rest of their life. Working with a bunch of archers, some that have been shooting for 20 plus years, others that are just jumping into it. And so if this is anything that encompasses who you are as an archer, then stay tuned because this is a good video on proper form. Now, I'm taking this form from a kinesiologist, biomechanist, anatomist, from a physical therapist. So my degree as a doctor of physical therapy is to really make sure that I'm preventing injuries and making sure that people are doing things correctly. So I have a little bit of different spin on this and why I like people drawing a certain way. Now, everyone's a little bit different, and there's this spectrum, we'll say, that people can draw in, and there are certain ways that people get away with drawing, for instance, with a really low shoulder like this. That's a little disclaimer or precursor to what you're gonna see is ideally we like seeing people drawing with this higher elbow. I'll get into the exact science of why that is, and when I presented last year at ATA, they asked me primarily to talk about basically preventing injury so that coaches and other people could take this information and distribute it out to their athletes and things like that. So when I see my mountain athletes, this is the stuff that we're talking about, getting it from the research and really diving into why it's important to draw correctly. Working with USA Archery, it's been super fun to be able to observe them. Myself, I've been shooting nearly 20 years, and again, not just from my own opinion, but from the research and gathering data, this is what we've compiled and why it's super important to draw correctly. Basically to prevent injuries, preventing any of this anterior shoulder pain. A lot of people will have that. So let's jump over here. Let me basically on this picture right here. So this is the back side of your body. This is your hairline, we'll say, your spine here. Your scapula sits right here. Up here you have the spine of the scapula, and then you have your supraspinatus, so part of your rotator cuff. So 4 rotator cuff muscles. Your supraspinatus, your infraspinatus, your teres minor, and then on the other side, so on the front side of your scapula, you have the subscapularis. Now, the primary purpose of these muscles is to inferiorly draw that glenohumeral joint down. Basically what that does is it prevents any compression, soft tissue approximation of the tissues right here against this AC joint. Now that's super important when we're drawing a bow, when we're shooting a bow, because that shoulder gets up into this position, right? So you want to make sure that as you're up in this position, you're avoiding things not to do, get that shoulder up, shrugging like that. So if we look at this form, and if we look back at the form of an archer, you have this perfect T formation, right? So I'm holding my bow with my bow arm and my string arm, whether you're a recurve archer, whether you're a compound archer, you're in this typical T formation. Now, I may get some grief on this. There is a right way, there is a wrong way to shooting a bow, and there's certain, again, that spectrum of angles we want to really look at. Now this is again coming from more the anatomy and the science and the biomechanics of things. The reason for that is we just want to avoid that compression. So when you're in this form, ideal posture is, if we call this a 90-degree angle, you want 135 degrees of this extension right here. And then you want anywhere from 90 to about 115 degrees of this shoulder abduction. Now what that does, again, preventing shoulder pain, if you draw a straight line up from your armpit, you'll run right into a tendon called the bicep tendon. So the tendon of the long head of the bicep. Now, a lot of people get irritation here, a lot of archers, primarily when they start to draw their bow incorrectly. Now I'll show you here. So from a scientific standpoint, again, what I'm looking at, so make sure I don't, got a target down there, make sure I don't shoot one through my wall. But as I draw this bow, the number one thing that you can do to really increase accuracy, making sure your grip is consistent every single time. So I'm gonna get into this position, put my hand on my bow. I'm gonna use, and this is maybe another video, but yeah, anyways, what I wanna do though in this one is making sure as I'm drawing, I see a lot of this happen. My bow arm is outstretched completely, so it's straight out like that. Now when you have these brace heights of 7 inches, 6 inches, 6.5, 6.25, what that does, if I'm fully extended, my elbow now has to be midline, or it has to be over midline. So if this is my midline right here, if I start with my bow arm completely out in front of me, then if you look where my elbow is, it's in front of midline. Well, what that does to this area right here is it completely compresses. Now on the front side, it completely compresses that bicep tendon, which would be running about right here, because this would be wrapping around like this. It completely compresses that bicep tendon. That causes shoulder pain. That causes irritation there. And so what you want to do when I'm looking at someone drawing, and when I'm coaching, and when I'm drawing some of these lines on people when they're drawing their bow, is making sure that they have a push-pull motion, right? So my elbow right here, my string arm elbow, is about the height of my eye, maybe a little bit higher, and that's okay. As I draw, I'm not over in front of midline. My bow arm now is slightly bent, and I'm gonna do a push-pull motion. And as I do that, I'm gonna get to my anchor, and then I can shoot. So what's important, as I drew back, I came down on it. Now the purpose of that, if we go back to this video, if we go back to this drawing right here, what that's doing is it's engaging your lat muscles right here. It's engaging, if you think of your trap muscle, it's engaging your low traps, it's engaging your posterior deltoid, it's engaging, again, those rotator cuff muscles that pull that down. And so that's why a lot of the exercises you'll see me do and really prescribe and make sure that archers are doing is a lot of this motion up in this plane right here. Again, helping that scapula rotate. When you draw a bow, in a resting position, your scapula, it doesn't sit completely parallel to the spine, but as you draw, this entire scapula right here, so that scapula, it rotates upwardly like that. So if it's sitting on your spine like this, it rotates, and then the head of that humerus rotates in that as well. So you have two joints there really rotating upwardly, some rotating inferiorly to prevent some of that compression. So what I look for when I'm watching people draw their bow, things that I would suggest is, if you're new to archery, if you've been shooting a long time, if you're starting to have some of that shoulder pain, if you're trying to prevent some of that shoulder pain, get it looked at. Give me a call, message me, DM me, leave a comment here, jump on my website, and let's fill out a little tiny survey, message me, and let's look at it. Like I said, everyone's a little bit different, but where there's some commonalities, people have this anterior shoulder pain when they're drawing with too much pulling back, drawing too much with just the one string arm. That's where people get compression. That's where people run into issues. What you want to do is make sure you come down onto it. You use those stronger muscles, the deltoid, lower traps, things like that, and that you're conditioned enough. Now, here is a little caveat, I guess I'd say, is there are some people that you see, maybe you're one of them, that has a different form than this. Now again, this is what is recommended. It's what it's always been recommended. But if you have this different form where people are like this, there's certain times people can get away with that. And I'll dive into that a little bit later, but for this video's sake, good form. Again, keeping that shoulder, that scapula about 90 to 115 degrees, horizontal extension, abduction that way, about 135. Not letting that elbow get too high above your eyes, keeping it really about at eye level. And as you draw back, you're thinking about leading with that elbow, going straight back behind you, using your scapular muscles, kind of opening up your chest and not being too compressed here. And also the last thing that I want to really touch on is making sure when you do draw that bow arm is not fully extended, that it's a push-pull motion. Do those things. Some exercises that I really like to help with this. Again, so for scapular mobility, we're talking about this right here, getting that scapula to move on your thoracic spine. You can do things with exercise bands. You can do things with pulleys, cables. You can do things with weights. You're in this position here, and if you see the angle of my shoulders here, I'm going up about 110, 115 degrees, 90s here, 110, 115. I'm really trying to hug a tree, hug a bear here. Basically get my scapula all the way on my thoracic spine, rotating and upwardly rotating, and then coming back. Now you can do that again. If you watch this really quick, you can do that on a bench as you're here and really pushing up. So you can do punches that way, do that little push-up, plus you can do it in a push-up position and come here and do a little bit more. Again, what this is doing, working on scapular mobility on that thoracic spine, rotating upward and getting good scapular mobility to prevent injuries. Try some of these techniques. If you have questions, please subscribe to this channel. I have a lot more of these videos planned, and again, just good mechanics of trying to keep you healthy, trying to keep you out of any injuries while you're shooting. Please subscribe. Let me know if you have questions. Comment, message me if you want to go through this in depth a little bit more. There's a lot more to dive into, but that's it for this video. Thanks.